Passover is one of my favorite times of year. I remember sitting out in the back with my grandfather and my father and some of the other family members around a fire. And I'd hear my grandfather just tell stories of how God would save His people. They were wonderful stories, told well by my grandfather. He said that God actually by day would stay with them in a pillar of clouds. Can you imagine? A pillar of clouds. I like clouds. I enjoy looking at clouds. Can you imagine God in a pillar of clouds? And at night, God was with them in a pillar of fire. Wow. It must have been something to experience that time when God led His people with a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire. Isn't Yahweh just the greatest? Isn't Yahweh the greatest? Gosh. Well, it's interesting that my grandfather happened to be telling the story of the Passover on this day. I was about 12. We were around a fire again, and he was telling his story. And, you know, my father was a hard worker, and he had a job, but it just didn't provide a lot for us. And so we were hungry a lot. Well, he would tell this story, and he would always seem to end it the same way, and he'd always look at me. And he would say, "Anani, this is what God does for those He loves." Well, you know, on this day, I was pretty hungry. And, you know, I have this problem, I have to admit. I talk too fast. I mean, not that my speech is too fast. My mouth goes faster than my brain. and in doing that, you know, my mom even said, "Boy, you gotta slow down that mouth and let your brain catch up." And on this day, it just didn't happen. And so when he said, "This is what God does for those He loves," I just spit it out. I mean, I didn't mean any disrespect. I just said, "Well, where is He now?" Well, my grandfather had this look. I call it his pillar of fire look. And he pointed at me. "And God is still leading. God is still feeding. God is still speaking." Put my head down. Just sort of turned around. I was hoping, really, that a pillar of fire was going to show up in the sky right now so that it would kind of take the family's look at me away. Well, that didn't happen. But I just was hungry. I just saw my brothers, my mom. You know, they were hardworking parents, and we were struggling. And I was thinking, if he told this man a story that all this bread would rain down from heaven, more bread than they could ever eat, where is He now? Where is the bread? Well, I've grown up. Now I'm a father and a grandfather myself, and I have another story. I have another story to tell. You see, we had heard of this person that was healing. And so this is the story that I tell my children now. But this happened to me when I was 12. We heard of this healer, this prophet, and his name was Jesus, and had never seen him, but we'd heard about him. And so one day my dad came home, and he got the family, gathered us around, and said, an invalid who had problems, could not walk for 38 years, was healed today by this rabbi. He said that the rabbi, as he was told, the rabbi went to this man and said, would you like to walk? Well, the man hadn't walked in 38 years. Really, all he wanted to do was get into the pool. at Bethesda. But he had been there for 38 years and couldn't get in the pool. He just wanted to get in the pool. Jesus said, you don't need to get in the pool. Just get up, pick up your mat and walk. Are you kidding? And my dad said, that's what happened. He actually got up, stood up, picked up his mat, and walked away. That was the story that day where my dad said, we're going to go see the rabbi. And so he gathered us all together. And by the time we got things together and got all packed up and we're going towards the Sea of Galilee, this rabbi, this prophet, this healer was on the east side of the Sea of Galilee. And so that's where we positioned ourselves. We moved in and we got there a little earlier than the crowd that eventually came. And so we got a really nice spot on the grass. So we positioned ourselves there. And on the way, we bought 5 loaves and 2 fish to supply us for about a week or 10 days. I know. It doesn't sound like a lot. But that's what you have to make do when you have little money. Well, anyway, we were there, and sure enough, we weren't far away from that rabbi. Now, I have to tell you, 12 years old, he didn't look like much to me. I mean, he just looked like another man. And those 12, they called them disciples. Those 12 guys that hung around him, I'm going to tell you, they didn't look like the sharpest tools in the carpenter's toolbox, if you know what I mean. They didn't look like they had it all together. But they were helping and they were kind of positioning the crowd and talking to people. Well, I overheard after a while, and more people had come, I heard the rabbi say to the one, what are we going to give these people to eat? I was on his team now. I was pretty hungry. My stomach was growling. Hadn't had much to eat. I was hoping they were going to find something. The disciple, of course, he sort of shrugged his shoulders. I don't know. Well, then, it happened again. My mouth kind of outran the old brain. And so when one of the disciples was walking by, I sort of grabbed his leg. I said, hey, fella, I got 5 loaves and 2 fish. That'll feed all these people. And I kind of chuckled, a little sarcastic. I didn't really. He grabbed me. Pulled me up, took me to the rabbi. I was just kidding. And I looked, my father's mouth was down to the ground. My mother was kind of had that grin like, told you, you gotta slow down that mouth. But my grandfather, that pillar of fire was right there staring at me. Yeah, he took me up to the rabbi. Scared to death. I didn't know what to think. And so the rabbi comes down and gets on a knee in front of me and looks at me, looks me right in the face and says, child, what are you offering? And I thought, oh no, I'm giving away all of my family's food for 10 days. They are going to be so mad at me. I said, I just have 5 loaves and 2 fish. Well, I told you he didn't look like much to me. But I'm going to tell you, when he looked into my eyes, I have never seen such compassion in a set of eyes from that day, even now, as an old man. I have never seen the look of compassion and love and care that the rabbi looked like that particular day. He whispered in my ear, he said, child, there are a lot of people here, and they are very hungry. And they've come so that I could feed them. And that's what I intend to do. And then he said, because that's what God does to those he loves. Oh, how did he know? My grandpa, it's the same story. So he took my basket and he blessed it. And he called his friends. Those guys I didn't think looked too sharp. He called them. And they came up and they took the basket and they started going through the crowd. My head dropped. I thought, oh no, I am in so much trouble. We won't feed people and my family will have nothing. Just then, a disciple, I think it was John, he kind of taps me on the back and he lifts me up and he says, look, what do you see? People. A lot of people. And they're all staring at us. He says, but what else do you see? They're eating. People are eating. They all were getting something to eat. I took off. I ran back to my family, and my father and my grandfather were eating. And my grandfather says, Anai, it's a miracle. We have taken place in a miracle today. He's feeding all of us. There are thousands here. He's feeding us all. He took my 5 loaves of barley and 2 fish and made it enough for 5,000. And that was just the men. There were boys like me and moms and daughters. There were easily 10 or 12, I don't know. There were thousands eating that day. I'll never forget that day. Well, it wasn't but a short time later, that rabbi named Jesus, the people were calling the Savior. Well, we found that out to be true. Because just a short time later, they arrested him and they killed him. But God had another miracle up his sleeve. Oh yes. The tomb couldn't hold Jesus, and he arose. Because you see, that's what God does for the people he loves.
Amen.
So, I moved away from that town. I didn't live in that town anymore. I never forgot that day. But I got married and had children of my own. But God never stopped talking to me. Never stopped speaking to me. Never stopped feeding me. And sometimes he asks you to do things that maybe you're a little uncomfortable. So one day he said, Ananias, there's a man I want you to go, and he's blind. And I want you to make him see again. You just do what I tell you. Well, who is it, Lord? Who's blind? His name is Saul. Not Saul. The one that persecutes all the Christians? That's it. Ananias, you're doing the right thing. Go and remove his bandages. Well, God had done a lot in my life, and so I followed him. I listened to him. And I went and I found Saul in a room, and he could not see. And his eyes were covered over with scales. And so I did as God asked me to do. I prayed, I removed the bandages, I put my hands on his eyes, and Saul was able to see. See, that's what God does for people he loves. Well, I don't know whatever happened to that Saul fellow, but I do know that I bet you he never saw things the same way again. And neither do I. To God be the glory. Amen.
Amen.
Our final hymn is number 593. 593. Here I am.